Hi, this is Bev Holden from the Clear Thinking Partnership, and this is the next in our series of Collaborate Live. If you've been following the series, you'll know that we're interviewing people about their experiences of collaborating with others. And today I'm really pleased to be joined by a gentleman called Chris Forrest. We know Chris because we've been working with him for the last 12 months or so. And Chris is a senior OD manager with the NHS for Midlands and Lancashire CSU. Now, the reason for inviting Chris on today is because he has a really refreshing approach to how he collaborates with suppliers. And that's the thing that has really appealed to us. But I've got no idea what Chris is going to talk about today. So I think we should just say hello and see where we go from there. So hello, Chris.
Hello, Bev.
Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm going to start by asking you the first question, which is, if you think back to your most memorable and positive experience of collaborating with others, what was that, and what were the factors that you think were in place that made it such a positive experience?
Okay, sort of reflecting on that, and I think there's loads and loads of different examples. So I've tried to think of one that's recent and multidisciplinary and involves lots of different aspects, and I suppose the one I'd come up with, it's interesting because you've been involved in it, and interestingly Ian, that you interviewed a couple of weeks ago, was involved in it. And if I just sort of describe what we were trying to achieve, it was that I had a corporate requirement to create a management development program, and I had a vague picture in my mind's eye of what I wanted it to be, and it felt like a 5-day program over a period of weeks and months. So, one day spaced with 3 or 4 weeks of reflection and in between times, and then come back to learn. And also on a range of subjects that are relevant to middle leaders and managers. Also, I wanted some common threads. In terms of, I wanted to make sure that managers got an insight into using emotional intelligence at work, into different contemporary leadership theories and principles and practices, and I want them to go away being able to put what they've learnt into practice in their practice at work. Beyond that, I didn't want to frame the requirement too detailed, because what I had was a whole range of really great associates available to the organisation, the likes of Clear Thinking, the likes of Kingfisher and so on. There was loads and loads of really great, inspiring and innovative people that I wanted to work with. And what the last thing I wanted to do was tell them what the answer was. I just wanted to sort of say, well, here's the thing I need to do. I want to do it together with you. But beyond that, let's see what we can do. And so what I did is, I've got a group of 40 or so associates, and I looked at those that I thought, do you know what, these guys have got common values, not identical, but even though I knew all of them to one degree or another, and some of them knew each other, and they were all, in a traditional sense, competitors, but I don't think that's how they see the world. It's not a fight, it's not a competition, it's, although there is an element of that. And we all came together in a room in I think it was in December last year, and I sort of tried to describe as best I could this harebrained idea I had to 7 or so really what I found interesting people who I thought had shared values, and then said, so what do you think? And it was so refreshing that everybody sort of said, yeah, okay, let's follow this rather strange idea and we'll see where we get to. And the outcome was better than I could have envisaged. And each associate worked on a different subject, whether that will be communication or leadership or resilience or coaching. But it came together, and the whole is so much greater than each individual component, even though each individual component stands alone as a great piece of work. So, I don't know if that's answered your question or...
Yeah, it has actually, because you've picked upon some things around the shared values that you identified in that group of people, And I think that's a really important bedrock for being able to collaborate well. Um, and and you've picked up as well on something which I don't think I've heard so far in the calls that we've had, which is about wanting to bring a group of people together, but not wanting to be too prescriptive with how they do what they do. What was kind of your thinking and your rationale behind that?
Well, on the face of it, I suppose an easy answer I could have, in most large organisations. I suppose I'm talking from the context of a large bureaucracy, whether public sector or private, and I don't mean bureaucracy in a disparaging way. It's a fact of a large organisation. It would have been relatively easy for me to go, yeah, no problem. Here's a management development program, and I put something together, and I'm quite sure it'd have been perfectly acceptable and job done. But I felt that was shortchanging people in terms of the potential students and delegates on the course, because there's so much more out there that I don't know about. It's kind of, I knew there was things I didn't know, and what I didn't want to do was close people's experiences down before they had a chance to see what was out there. So there was that, and I'd worked with yourselves and a few other people and really enjoyed that, and got the sense that there's lots more that we could do, and each associate brought something completely different that I never envisaged or anticipated. And from what I can work out, likewise, they've sort of also got something out of working with these other people that they may not necessarily have come into contact with or have worked with before, but not necessarily in this context. And it just meant that the final outcome was better than I could have envisaged. So, yeah, I just had this sense that we could do something really great here, and what my job was to create the conditions for that success.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And as someone on the inside of that, it has been a really rich experience, because I have spent time with people I wouldn't normally spend time with and learnt from them. And I think that's one of the things in a good collaboration, because it would be very easy, having almost forced us into a room together, for it to be quite a strained and almost unpleasant experience. But I think having chosen people who have got very similar values, I think that's, like I said before, the bedrock of it all. And I think that's the thing that's made it easier, because people have got that strong desire to collaborate, strong desire to help one another to get that final outcome. And the goal was clear, and we all knew what the part that we could play and how we could contribute to the success of that project. So it has a lot of ingredients. It's a very good case study, if you like, of what a positive collaboration can look like. And then I don't think we've had any bumps to iron out either, which has been a good thing. So it is a really, really good example. Great stuff. Okay, so can you tell me a bit about how collaboration plays a part, putting that example aside, how working collaboratively plays a part in everyday life for you in the role that you do?
Okay, it's a really challenging question, actually. On the face of it, it's kind of, it's something that I do every day, and it's sort of trite and probably not true. Much as I try to collaborate as much as possible, take a collaborative approach. It's not a panacea. It doesn't solve every problem, and it requires certain conditions. It requires almost a parking of your ego. It requires a clear, not necessarily a clear detailed brief, but you need to have an idea that you're going to work on something. You might not know what the outcome's going to be, but there needs, so I think I try and collaborate wherever and whenever I can. But you almost need to, oh, my screen's gone blank. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, it's okay. You can carry on. I can still hear you and see you.
Right, okay. I shall carry on nonetheless. And I'll try and bring the computer back as well. There we are. And this is really disconcerting because everything disappeared on my screen. In terms of everyday working then, I think if you contract up front properly so that people know where they are and what they're trying to do, then you can achieve a greater outcome than you might have expected, and it can embolden you to look for more opportunities. So it's not always applicable, but there are also subtle influences day to day as well, in that, you know, I think I've touched on earlier, it makes you realise how little you perhaps don't know, but what there is out there. So it makes you realise that you can go and seek other people out to help you, and that great people can do amazing work individually. You know, all of the associates in the example I talked about before would have done great things individually. However, it's even better when they collaborate. So I think with the right conditions and the right criteria, it can work really well on a day-to-day basis, but I try not to think of it as a panacea and, you know, sort of nail it to everything that I do, because it's not always appropriate.
No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It isn't always appropriate, and it doesn't fix everything. And there are moments when actually collaborating would be desperately wrong. But there are also, like we've identified, moments when it works beautifully. One of the things you said at the beginning there was about putting egos to one side, and that having humility and recognizing that you don't know everything and you're not the only person in the room. It is really important. How do you get people to do that? So with teams that you work with, how do you get them to realise that it's okay for them not to be the smartest person in the room?
It's really, I would say it's really difficult, and it's not something to say, yes, we've achieved that. On some examples, you think, yeah, at that moment in time or on that piece of work, we all sort of parked ourselves, got over ourselves and worked together and created something great. But generally, I think in the workplace and in a large organisation, you need to constantly help people to realise that they don't know the answer, and that's okay, but together we can find an answer, or together we can work on something really great. In terms of how you achieve that, as well as, I think you have to bring yourself and say, look, you know, I don't know the answer to this, or I don't know where this is going to take us, but that's okay, because I have confidence that where we get to, it will be the right place, and we'll achieve something really powerful. And I think when people see that you open up, or that you say, well, I don't know the answer, they then say, oh, actually, that's okay, because I didn't know either, or I feel better now because I thought I was the only one. That is a large part of it, but it's not all of it. But I think that's a place where I'd always start, is to sort of, you know, take the first step and be the first one to say, look, I don't know, but that's okay. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't achieve something.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I think when I think about my children in school now, they're taught to acquire an amount of knowledge, and when they're measured on that amount of knowledge, that determines whether they're clever or not, or bright enough, or have acquired enough knowledge. So there's an element of I know enough, or I'm right, I have the answer. And actually what I've realised in the work that we do is that it's much better if we don't have the answer, or we assume we don't, because then we're more curious and we ask the right questions. But I do think we're kind of conditioned to think that we must have an answer. And we see that in all kinds of situations. So in coaching situations where a manager will assume they have to solve a problem for the person that they're working with, rather than showing that curiosity and helping that person discover the answer, and recognising that it's okay not to know everything. But I just think it's the way that we're kind of conditioned. So I think you do have to take that first step. So there has to be someone in the room who's willing to go, you know what, I don't know, and that's okay. What should we do?
No, I just really powerfully agree with you, I suppose, in that we're sort of fighting against not only the education that people have sort of said there is a right answer or there's a wrong answer and you need to get the right answer, and then for the last X number of years in the workplace, it's all about the manager has to know, the manager must know the answer. The manager can't know the answer, and I think particularly now the way the world of work is changing, whether it's with social media or technology, you can't know the answer. But what you can do is create conditions for people that have a contribution to the answer to thrive.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Brilliant. Okay, so the next question is kind of a frivolous one. But if you were going to collaborate with anybody, who would that be and why?
Hmm. This is really challenging again. Yeah, I like the questions, really hard, but good. I suppose I've got a three-part answer, if that's okay. I suppose the first one is actually I don't mind who I collaborate with next, because I I would try and remind myself to come back to that human beings tend to be quite social animals. Therefore, they they can default back to collaborating really well. If you look at young children, particularly before the education system standardises them, they constantly collaborate. You know, from the ages of 18 months upwards, they'll just parallel play, which then moves into playing together, and they collaborate to create amazing fantasy worlds. And we all have that within us, and we get it standardized out of us. So I suppose a default answer is actually some people are really, really great at collaborating, but in general terms, whoever I get the opportunity to collaborate next is great. You know, firm believer in that, that it's amazing what is possible with whoever is the next person that comes along to collaborate with, or the next group of people. That said, I do want to answer your question properly. So there was two names that sprung to mind. I thought that would be really interesting to see where things go, and it's interesting. The first guy I thought of is a guy called Sir Ken Robinson, who's a British-born, Liverpool-born educationalist, and he sort of blogs and writes and talks a lot around education. And he's got this idea that, in terms of how children should learn, in particular, that there's three elements that he thinks should be in place and aren't in place, which is around a diverse curriculum, curiosity through creativity, and removing the standardized testings. You mentioned it earlier, interestingly, that we're conditioned throughout life to do exams, and that's success, and that there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And a main tenet of his views is that actually that doesn't work at all. And so I would love to spend time working with him and seeing what will be possible with adults in the workplace learning. The other guy I thought of was another interesting guy. He's Elon Musk is his name. He's the owner, chief executive officer of Tesla, which makes electric cars, and he was also one of the, I don't know if he was a co-founder or an early collaborator in creating PayPal. And the reason I picked on Elon is that he's got this idea that he wants to open up all the patents and copyrights that his company have on electric cars, to say anyone with good intent that wants to create an electric car can use these. Let's see where we can get to. And I thought that's really, really refreshing, and actually where I think success lies, rather than copyrighting something and pinning it down so that no one else can use it. I thought, well, if someone with such potential intellectual property rights, I'm sure they're worth billions, but he said, you know what, we could share these and we could achieve some great things with it. So that's my three-part answer to that.
Wow. Fantastic. You mentioned Ken Robinson. He's doing the TEDx event up at either Manchester or Liverpool later this month. So he's live on stage strutting his stuff.
I will endeavour to see if I can get to that one, because I've seen some of his TEDx stuff in the past on YouTube and so on, and really powerful, really interesting speaker.
Yeah.
One of my favourite people.
Fantastic. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm really grateful for you taking part in the Collaborate Live series. It's always interesting to get other people's insights into how they perceive collaborative working, how it works for them, and their experiences. So I'm really grateful. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it at the time, so it's been a nice chat.
Good. So we'll be back in another week or so with the next in our Collaborate Live series. But thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
See you soon.